Okay, I don't see that many others trickling in. If they do, that'll be fine. So let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Lynn Walsh, again, Assistant Director at Trusting News, and I'm joined by my two colleagues, Joy and Molly. Joy and Molly, do you want to say hello?
Hey guys, nice to see some familiar faces. How are you?
Hi, all. Thanks for joining us today.
So, like I said, today is going to be, we're really looking to get feedback from all of you, from whether you are journalists, researchers, supporting journalists. We want to learn how you are thinking about educating the public around AI. So if you are able to turn your camera on, turn your audio on, that would be great. Please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself. I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to spend the first 10-15 minutes just kind of getting an introduction to this. And then we're going to go to breakout rooms for all of you to brainstorm in smaller groups about this topic. So let me go ahead and share my screen. You should be seeing it there. Let me open this up here to slideshow. So first and foremost, I'm going to just briefly, well, if you're not familiar with Trusting News, I know I see so many familiar names, but let me give you just a quick overview of what we do at Trusting News. Our whole goal is to help journalists rebuild trust with the public, with the idea that if that happens, more and more of the public is going to get that ethical, responsible, accurate information that journalists are producing. We've been doing this since 2016, and we do this in a continual kind of circle of learning and experimentation. So we'll come up with potential solutions to this trust problem. We will test them out and experiment with them with newsrooms, oftentimes attaching research, basically seeing, did this work? How did audiences respond? And then we share those best practices more widely through webinars, toolkits on our website, and our Trust Tip newsletter. So today we're going to talk about the AI education. And so why we are focusing on this is first and foremost, we have been very interested in how people think about AI and how that's going to relate to journalists using AI. So we know journalists are using AI. We know that probably it's going to be used more and more as the technology advances. So if we know that trust in news is low and journalists are going to use AI, we thought, okay, what do people think about AI? And so very briefly, there has been a lot of research done on this topic. Reuters has done research internationally on this. Poynter has done some research on this. We've done some research on this. But what we do know is that there is widespread awareness of AI. People's likelihood of using AI does depend a lot on maybe who they are. People are very familiar with tools like ChatGPT. They may not be as familiar with other tools that you may be using in your newsroom. We also know that younger audiences tend to use it more. One point that I think is really important to think about this is most of the public thinks that journalists are already using AI. We also know when it comes to being asked questions about that use of AI by journalists, people say that they have more comfort level with journalists using AI when humans are involved, and they tend to be more comfortable with journalists using it for text instead of audio and video. Now, the big point here that research does show is there are concerns that people have about AI. Some people are fearful of the technology. Some people are very concerned that it could lead to misinformation, disinformation, that it's going to be hard to tell the difference between what is real and what's actually been created with AI. We also know that people do want transparency and disclosure when AI is used. So again, looking at this issue of, okay, a lot of people are kind of questionable about AI. They maybe don't understand it. Most people don't have like a very like, yes, I love AI type of feeling. And so when we combine that to what people think of the news, which again, if we, I'm sure you've experienced this firsthand, trust in news is low around the world, but especially here in the US. Obviously, there are differences depending on the individual, but for the most part, almost anyone you ask probably is maybe shows a little signs of distrustfulness in news. We know that when people don't know how journalism operates, they don't give us the benefit of the doubt. That then leads to that distrust, that assumption. They fill that information void with something they assume. Often that assumption is negative, and we don't get kind of the credit for doing all of the thoughtful thinking that we are doing. So we have AI coming up. People are concerned about it, questioning it, fearful of it even. We know that journalists are using it. We also know that people don't trust news. So at Trusting News, as I've been looking at this kind of phenomenon happening over the last couple of years, my question has been, what can we do to not let our use of AI contribute more to more distrust in the content we are producing? And so one thing that we did to start is we gathered 10 newsrooms together and we had them ask their news consumers, what do they think about AI? What do they think about journalists using AI? How comfortable are they with different use cases of AI? So we did that last summer, and those newsrooms did that through a newsroom survey and through a community interview guide. The survey received over 6,000 responses from actual news consumers from these newsrooms. And the one-on-one interview guide, these were conversations with news consumers in their communities that lasted 20 to 40 minutes. And so what we learned from that research was that first and foremost, people do want transparency. They want journalists to disclose their use of AI. For the last year, we have been focusing on, okay, how can we help journalists do that? We know that people have sort of this distrust of AI. They have this distrust of news. When we ask what can kind of help them better be more comfortable, when we asked the public that through that survey, they said disclosure. So we've been helping newsrooms figure that out. And based on those responses, what we came up with was kind of a list of what AI disclosure should include. And we also have copy and paste language for journalists to use. So what should AI disclosures include? They should include information about what the AI tool did, an explanation about why AI was used, ideally language that shows how that use benefited the community or the news coverage, like how did it make it better? What is it allowing you to do to be helpful and useful for your community? It should also include a description of how humans were involved. Remember, some of that other research shows people tend to be more comfortable if they know a human was still involved in that process. And they also want an explanation to explain how you still made sure that your content was accurate. That could be that human involvement. It could be another way of fact checking. And so based on that, what we heard, based on this here about what we kind of deciphered from the surveys and analyzed about what an AI disclosure should include, we created sample copy and paste, Mad Lib style, fill in the blank language for people to use. It is something that can be said in a couple sentences. And so all of this is available on our website in a trust kit, which I'm going to share. But so after we came up with these recommendations, we actually just finished another cohort of newsrooms who used this sample language to attach it to actual news stories where they were using AI. And here's an example from USA Today and Gannett, where they are using AI to summarize articles. They call it key points. And so you may have seen this at the top of articles. How they kind of alert people to know that, hey, this is AI, is they have this little title here, AI assisted summary. When you click on it, they have a longer explanation about what that means. And here in this example, it says these key points were created with the assistance of artificial intelligence and reviewed by a journalist before publication. There's that human review. No other parts of the article were generated using AI. So we had 10 other newsrooms attaching disclosures like this to their content. And we then asked for readers' thoughts. So we will be sharing those results coming up actually here next month, and I'll share more of that at the end. But if you want to use any of this transparency language, if you're working on how should I talk to my news consumers about AI, how are my news consumers feeling about my use of AI, we have that survey, we have the community interview guide, and we have copy paste language all in this AI trust kit. So that research that we did last year, one of the first things that came out of it was the transparency. But another big element that came out of it was in those survey responses, we asked people if they would want to know more about AI. And this is AI in general, not just how AI is used in the newsroom. And more than 80% of those 6,000 plus people who answered the survey said that it would be helpful to know more about AI. And they said they would welcome that feedback from newsrooms. So that got us thinking, how can we do this? we see this as a huge, huge opportunity for journalists to build trust. If your audience is telling you something that they want your help with something, you now fulfill that need. That's potentially kind of building that pipeline to trust coming. They'll come back to you because they see that you were helpful for them. So that's what we want to spend today talking about. How can journalists educate the public, again, about AI in general, not just their own AI use? And so, what we want to spend the next 20 minutes doing is having all of you in smaller groups. You're going to be sent into a breakout room and you're going to answer 4 questions. We want to know from you, do you know what your audience wants to know about AI? Now, for this question, I want to point out, we are not looking for guesses. We only want you to fill in any information here if you have heard from them, if you have received questions, or if you've asked them what they want to know. So no guesses, please. We really want like actual feedback maybe you've received. What is your audience saying they are confused about, they want to know about? And remember, some of this might not come as a kind of question like, tell me more about AI. Maybe they're asking about how you are using AI, or they're confused about how to tell if something's real or fake. Another question we want to know is, where and what formats would your newsroom share AI education content? So be as specific as possible, but here we're looking for you to share ideas on, would it be a video on social? Would it be copy and paste? Would it be a video on social, copy paste language, a Canva card, an on-air story, expert interviews, an FAQ? Kind of think and brainstorm and think big if you want, as far as like what you would be willing to do. The next question we have is like, what support would make this easier? So let's say you're saying, yeah, we would actually love to share kind of social cards that explain what AI is, what it's good for, what it's not good for. So, okay, if you were, what would make that easier for you? Would it be nice if we created templates that allowed you to share that more easily? Maybe add your brand colors? Would providing expert interview transcripts or information from people be helpful? So again, think big, think about what would make this easier for you to create the content to then share with your audience. And then the last question, I'm really curious if it matters who is involved when this content is created. And so what I mean by that is, if we had an expert from a university that is able to break down the key points about how AI is being used, privacy concerns, would you use that video? Or are you going to repurpose it with your own anchor, your own reporter? Would it be okay if it comes from a media literacy expert? Would it be okay if it came from Trusting News or another organization? So we're really just kind of trying to dig in deep, because we want to create content or find content that already exists, share it with newsrooms, and have them share it and see what happens. So I'm going to show you how we're going to get this feedback really quickly here. We are going to do this through these interactive slides. So when I stop talking here, we're going to put you into breakout rooms. You're going to have 3 to 5 people in each room. Which room you're assigned to. So here's the first question. You'll see that there's a slide after each question that has a number in the left-hand corner. If you're in group 1, if you could put your answers, and these are all going to be editable, so you can kind of type and edit as you go, put them on the slide that says 1. Again, here's the second question, here's 1, and so on. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And I want to see very quickly, do we have any questions before we go to breakout rooms? Is anyone having trouble with the interactive slides? I saw Joy put the link in there. Thank you.
I did, but only one person's in so far. So hi, folks. Welcome.
Okay, so first, step 1, let's click on that link. Let's get in the interactive slides. Oh, I see. Okay, 11, here we go. Yeah, we have people in there. Good, perfect. Any other questions before we send you off? Okay, so you will be there for about 20 minutes. And again, there are 4 questions to get through. Please feel free, as you're having group discussions, to just type away as others have ideas, as you have ideas, right? It doesn't have to be kind of like this is exactly what my group said. If you have kind of extra things to add, please do. And if you're having any trouble or need anything, come back to this room and we will, one of us will kind of pop in. But for the most part, we're going to leave you to brainstorm for 20 minutes. How was that? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen just because I'm going to kind of go through them. But when I do this, I'm going to, if you have, I'm going to also share my sound because we're going to look at some examples too here. So, okay, so let's just start with the first question. What does your audience most want to know? And again, I said, please no guessing. So I want to just highlight some things that we saw here in some of the other groups. And then if anyone, one thing that Joy was mentioning, and I think is a good point here, is just, starting with the basics. I love this. How does it even work? Like, how does AI work? How would we explain it? Why are journalists using AI? There were some here about politics, which I think also is another kind of basic thing that we forget about. Like, people are concerned about those deep fakes. And so or just fake information in general, can we equip them to be able to better decipher the content themselves? Is there anything on this first question that anyone wants to chime in that they were talking about? Oh, the environmental implications of using AI. Absolutely. I wish we were covering that more in a way that made sense for people. Okay, let's go to this next question with formats. Which platforms and formats? On-air packages, YouTube videos, social video, social cards. Is anyone currently sharing any AI kind of literacy materials in any of these formats? If you are, I'd love to hear if you want to unmute yourself. Who is, we
We
have
know
someone
Media
here.
Wise is. Sean is here.
Yes, yes. We have someone who said in-person event collaboration with local library network. Yes. So one thing that I'm going to share as we kind of get to the end of this is how we're moving forward. And we're actually going to have some innovation grants available to newsrooms to kind of think about some big ways to educate the public about AI. And also I wanted to point out Pointer recently put out a guide, and in it, they had like a sample agenda, if you will, or kind of walkthrough of what an event for an in-person event could look like. Another in-person, lots of in-person events. Awesome.
I can hop in if you'd like. Since
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd be happy to. So
Hi,
I'm
Sean.
Sean Marcus from
Yeah.
MediaWise. I actually sort of headed up that piece. So we did just recently put out a toolkit that does contain some of those with some templates and some different ideas for both social cards and in-person events that list out sort of a game plan, if you will, for doing something like that, with the notion being that we don't in a newsroom have a whole lot of time to create that material ourselves. So this sort of starts with templates and pieces of material that you can then build off of and brand, personalize, and customize. So yeah, we've been working on a little bit of that and getting that material out there.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. It's a great resource, and I did that agenda, if you will call it, of how to do the event sample is really good. Let's see. Okay, so what platforms? Brief article, tip sheets, which I have an example of that. What support? Sorry, banging here all of a sudden. What support would make sharing resources easier? So this we are really, really interested in. We are curious to see what we could do, what others like, what kinds of things will make sharing this content easier. So ready-made visual templates, experts. I'm curious if anyone put experts. I'm curious if anyone wants to weigh in, like, is clips with these experts good? Is it a list of experts? Like, what would be most helpful? Would you use video clips or video interviews or audio clips? And feel free, anyone, to kind of chime in either in the chat or by unmuting.
Hi, I'm Laura. I put that in there. So I will say, I think probably video clips could be useful. We were also talking about maybe a tool like, I know there's some that exist for like finding experts on education or on science, where you can kind of search, like, I'm looking for someone from my area who can talk about AI, a local university, or maybe I'm looking for someone who can talk specifically about deepfake. And just kind of finding, like, having a curated list of experts who are comfortable talking to the media they're willing to do it, and they are kind of vetted. Like, we know they're reliable, they're real people, and just sort of having like a place to go and look for sources like that.
Thank you. And so, Laura, in your case, and I know, it might be different for others, but in your case, it's having that expert so that you or your newsroom could go interview them, talk to them, and kind of then use it to create a story.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Or use
Yes.
them to
Okay.
talk about maybe something's happening. There's a deep fake in my community that's happened. How can I talk to someone about, like, how does this stuff get created? What should I be telling, my audience about this?
Awesome. I'm curious, the person who put policy templates, I don't know if you'd want to unmute and talk more about that. If you're talking about like laws that are coming down, like what people can expect.
That was me again.
Yeah. Oh, Sean, go ahead. Sorry.
Thinking more about templates for AI policy that you could then adopt and use and review. So I apologize, not legal policy, but newsroom policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Newsrooms. Okay. Sorry. I was thinking of with the public, and I was like, which I think actually is not a bad idea. I mean, they should be aware of sort of what privacy laws might be impacting, like how their data is being used. I think there's something there.
Or
so I
what
wasn't sure what you're
statewide
talking about,
laws
but-
are about to not be able to be enforced because of federal changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Copy paste kits. We have the expert video clips again. Storyboards. Okay. That could be edited for audio video projects. And then let's see, templates, outside experts. Oh, I love the examples of AI generated content to show the possibilities. I don't know if the person who put this wants to expand a little bit about what the idea would be here from an education standpoint.
I put that, and I'm happy to expand
Yeah.
on it.
Thanks, Kurt.
Something that I've noticed is that I feel like the general public has seen a lot of cases where generative AI content messes up and makes the pictures with too many fingers and the things that don't look realistic, and the list of books, some of which are not real. So I think we've seen like a lot of the failures, but I think the general public maybe hasn't seen a clear sense of all the kind of good, useful things that can be made with generative AI technology. So just kind of showing those and maybe demonstrating that, the technology has gotten better in the last few months even. And that's not to say everything's perfect, but just to show some of the possibilities.
Yeah, I love that. And the idea of also just covering like how it's being used around them, because it is probably you could look at whatever your beat is, the different ways that AI is being used, whether that's government, that's healthcare, that's education. And I think, you see the stories on AI in the classroom, but also just like how is it impacting hiring, maybe decisions that are being made about curriculum. I don't know, like there are all sorts of kind of different questions around that and possible stories that I think do fall under this AI education. Okay, so this last question, whose voice presence? And so what I was trying to get to here is like, if you're provided content, does it matter? Like, are you going to repurpose it so that it is your local reporter or your staffer who is sharing this content? And it looks like based on this slide, we have people who are saying, yeah, probably it's going to be a local reporter or a local staffer that they want to kind of be the face of these explanations. We do have someone who said expert research authority. Does anyone want to weigh in on how they've thought about this? Like if you were to get a clip, let's say someone from a university or maybe even like myself from Trusting News, and I was able to kind of quickly explain how AI works in 3 points, and it's a 40-second video. I don't know. Would you air that or use it, or do you want it to be your own reporters?
I think it would be the same thing that we see when we have training in our newsroom, where I can go out and tell the newsroom, do this for search or social optimization, and it glosses over, but somebody else comes in it and says the exact same thing. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe nobody told us about this. So I think having both internal and external voices matters in that respect.
Okay. I think that's a good point. Okay, so there are some other things I want to get to. So please, if you still have thoughts on this, keep filling this in, but I want to get to kind of show you a sample resource. So the first one I'm going to show you, this is a graphic that actually does currently exist This is something that the News Literacy Project created. And so, again, if you want to pull up those interactive slides, I want to know basically how likely are you to use this resource? So again, we have a scale 1 to 10. Would not use is 1, definitely would use is 10. And then if you're somewhere in between, and again, this idea is like, would you take this and use it? Would you have to maybe do some editing? Not likely, it's not a good fit. I'm curious, and feel free also to unmute yourself as you're kind of weighing in here and using the interactive slides on just any thoughts you might have on, if you were given this, would you use it? And if you wouldn't, like, what would be some roadblocks or ways to improve it? I don't see anyone moving the interactive lightning bolts, but if you want to move them, so you should be able to click
They're
on them
moving
and
them.
move
You
them
just
like,
can't see it
oh,
without
they are. Oh, I
refreshing.
can't see it. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Thank
If
you.
you
I was
go
like,
out
oh,
of
no one's moving it.
presentation mode, I wonder if it would be
Okay.
dynamic.
Let's see.
Maybe
Oh,
not.
yep, I
Oh,
can
yeah,
see
there
it
we
now.
go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna keep it here so we can kind of see it in real time. Thanks, Joy.
Okay.
Okay, so likely to use with some changes. And if anyone is, we also on the next slide here, like if there's anything specific, like if you were given a resource that and you're kind of one of those people that's putting it here in the 6, like likely to use with some changes, if you want to kind of jot down, like what would need to maybe be changed or what would kind of make the resource better, we would love to get some feedback on that. And if anyone wants to unmute and share what they're thinking as they're kind of voting this way. Oh, the colors aren't. Okay. For the so something I've been thinking a lot about is I know I came from broadcast, and I know we were very particular about like using brand colors. I don't know if that's what uh, whoever typed that was talking about, but I know that was something that we really wouldn't repurpose things unless we kind of put it in our brand colors or brand format.
So I put that in there, and I'm not thinking of brand
Yeah.
colors so much as
Mhm.
readability, blue on blue,
Okay.
color
Got it.
vision impaired people. It's just, it feels like
Yeah.
a bad mix off the top.
No, it's a great point.
I wonder about the size. I wonder if it might be more usable to folks if it were a series of social cards that people could swipe through.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you click on, I mean, it is, I know this is just like a screenshot, but it is a lot of information on like a very, it's almost like it would be better printed out, maybe hanging on a wall somewhere than like shared on stories, because it is a lot of information.
It
with
might be
some small
designed for a
text.
classroom wall, actually, knowing Newslit.
Could be, yeah. Oh, I love someone said interactive in some way. That's interesting to think about, which is very easy on the web nowadays to kind of make interactive elements, right? That are visualizations. So that would be interesting to think about. Someone said they think they would use it in a story that they wrote. This is interesting. This is kind of comment about making it not instructional, but kind of more explaining. I definitely think there is something there. Like, would we be able to kind of get more people interested if we are explaining it versus, I think to the point here, it's more like instructional. So that's kind of a tone thing that could be slight, but I think that's an important point. Yeah, it's not easy to read. Oh, swipeable, yep. So that would be social. Okay, keep typing, but I'm going to go to the sample resource 2 here. So this is a video from the Associated Press, and they actually have a series called AP Verified. So this is something that is designed for journalists. I want to just say that off the top. But I'm going to play just a portion of this clip that I actually think could be useful to the public. So I'm just going to hit play and just play it for like 30 seconds, but please use that interactive slideshow to kind of say, would you use it and what could be improved?
generated image depicting former U.S. President Donald Trump resisting arrest. This image was prompted by Bellingcat founder Elliot Higgins on Midjourney. Some of the noticeable tells that this was artificially generated include the subject's waxy skin, the blurred background image, and lack of focus across the image, as well as the odd, misshapen hands. It's important to remember that an integral element of AI is that it's constantly improving and learning from its mistakes. The machine will eventually learn to avoid some or most of these common tells. This is another generative AI image that went viral in March 2023, depicting the Pope in a fashionable white puffer jacket. It was
Okay, so I'm going to pause this because we're, a little short on time here, but the idea being, and that was Amy Reinhart. I think the video is great. Obviously, to her point, the ability of AI has gotten much better. So I think that's something to think about. Obviously, there are some dated references there to former president. Now he's the president again. But again, just kind of imagining that type of video where you might have an expert. Maybe it's Amy, someone from the AP. Maybe it's, someone else maybe it's a script for one of your journalists to kind of have them walk through. But if that's something you would use, and then if it is or if it isn't, just kind of some thoughts on like how to improve it. And again, feel free to unmute yourself if you have ideas there. I know something I've been thinking about with this is, we as journalists are taught how to and should be kind of keeping up with how to basically, detect something that's AI generated as something really real, verification. I do wonder what sharing some of those tools and how to use them, what that would look like for our audience. And I think some of them would really like that, but I'd be curious your thoughts on that. Someone says, no, people have already seen too much of this. Okay. Someone would use it in the newsroom. Yeah, that concern of it being outdated. That is something that, again, like in that video even. Oh, people need to see practical use of AI, not just novelties. So I don't know if whoever put that would want to unmute themselves. It's okay if you don't, but I'm assuming it's this idea of kind of what Kurt was saying, just that there are other uses out there, not just bad images, image editing.
Yeah, exactly. It was me. It was me again.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, yeah, I was just thinking, I think these are some of the kind of more novel and really striking examples of generative AI that were circulating maybe a year or two or three ago. And I think people have seen them. And a lot of folks maybe have this question of, well, I don't need to make, fanciful images of people in my work. So what could I use this for in my work?
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, so we have 4 minutes left. I have 2 more examples. I'm going to share them, and if you want to keep this up and kind of weigh in on them as I go through the rest of what I wanted to share. But so this next example, it's an interview with sort of, I guess I would call him an AI expert, basically just talking about what AI is, how it's being used, its limitations. It's 16 minutes. It is all audio. I'm curious if, as you weigh in, like if you would use an interview like this as is, or if you'd want to duplicate it locally. I'm assuming based on some of what we've already heard that you might be more willing to use it if you talk to them yourself, which is totally fine. But that's an example. And then one other example here, it's on slide 50. This is from a newsroom, Nucleo, who's a newsroom in Brazil. Now they just cover tech primarily and AI really. But there's this really great kind of, it's a tip on like how to use it. And I really like it because it's just simple, but super, I think, helpful if you really don't know a ton about AI. And I also like just how graphically it's kind of presented in this FAQ format. And so, again, if you think this would be something you would use, like how would you need to use it? What changes would need to be made? If you had the information, would you kind of repurpose it? Does it depend who the expert is? I know there's kind of a lot there that I'd welcome feedback on. But okay, I'm going to leave these slides, but please feel free to keep editing after we close here, because I want to just show you kind of why we are asking these questions and kind of what we're up to next. So first of all, thank all of you so much for participating. We also want to thank the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation. They are responsible for funding our previous year-long work on transparency, AI use disclosures, and they also are funding this next round of what we are going to do. So what's coming next from us, first and foremost, if you want to kind of continue to learn with us as we try to see how audiences are responding to AI use in journalism, and specifically when there's disclosures present, we will have new research that we will be sharing for the first time July 31st. So that is going to be a webinar with myself and Benjamin Toff, who was leading that research, and hopefully some of the newsrooms as well. But we are basically going to be able to share how did people respond when they saw an AI use disclosure attached to content where AI was used. We also hope to be able to maybe make some recommendations on placement, and also tell you how it relates to just overall trust in the journalist and in the newsroom. So then the next big thing is this focus on AI education. And again, we're thinking about this not just in how journalists are using it, right? But how can we educate the public about AI education, AI in general? And so one, look for an opportunity to provide more feedback and share and ask for more feedback with your colleagues. So the best way to keep in touch is our Trust Tip newsletter, and we also will send a follow-up email to all of you. But we will be looking for more feedback on this topic. If you have examples of how you are explaining AI to your community, please send them my way. You can also, if you've seen one that you're like, wow, that would be really great. It'd be really great to duplicate that. Please send that our way. And then the exciting news is we will be announcing that we will have 2 cohorts focusing on this very topic. So the first cohort we're going to recruit newsrooms to share AI education resources with their community. We will attach research to that sharing to basically see how the public's responding, and then be sharing what we're learning more widely. You also get that coaching support from Trusting News. And then I mentioned those innovation grants. So we will be offering newsrooms an opportunity to pitch an idea for how they may want to educate their public, their communities about AI, and have some money to put behind that. So that's all to come. The best way to stay on top of kind of those things as they come, because we don't have dates yet, is to pay attention to our Trust Tips newsletter, because we will be making those announcements there. So that is it. That is all I have. I'm a minute late at time, so I will stop there, but I do have a couple minutes to hang out if anyone has kind of questions or anything to share. But I just want to thank all of you for this, and we'll be sharing, like I said, to kind of get more feedback. This is just the beginning.